does environmental justice mean? Actually, when we hear of justice, thank God we have barrister here. I'm not a lawyer, but he has. So when we hear of justice, what comes to mind? Because let's be really, when we hear of justice, I know the term in Bamenda is kind of, it's the way it is. But
Fairness.
fairness, equality, balance, equity. When I hear of justice, the first thing I come to my mind is injustice. Because justice comes because there's injustice. Right? For me, personally, justice comes because there's injustice. And injustice is because there's no fairness, there's no balance. All these things that we mentioned. Environmental challenges, in particular, environmental challenges is a justice issue. Now we hear about climate justice and all these things. But I want us to look at something. This is the climate movement is growing. We all know everyone here is an activist. Why are people now going to the streets? Why are people now seeking for justice? It's because of what? The core principle of climate change is that it disproportionately affects people who cost it the least. That's what we're talking about fairness. People who contribute the least to climate change they're experiencing the highest burden of its impact. So we need justice. Those who have contributed the most, they need to take into account their actions. That is what justice is all about. And that's why you've seen this term environmental justice actually originated from the US, mostly from the civil rights movement. After the civil rights movement in the US, we talk about now disproportionate impact of environmental challenges, environmental policies on the black community, the poor people. So this is where this justice comes from. Now, before I really look at the definition of environmental justice, there's another term that is called environmental racism. This thing is in the US. But trust me, when it comes to waste management in Cameroon, when it comes to environmental policies, there's environmental racism everywhere. Do you know that there are places in Douala that electricity will never go off? Yes. Light will never go off. There are places in Yaoundé where they will never cut away water. There are places in Yaoundé where Isaka passes every day. Every day. That is part of racism. That racism. Because you are treating a particular group of people, you are giving preference to a particular group of people. Maybe because of economic class, maybe because of status in the society, maybe because of certain things that we attributed. Now look at what environmental racism is. It says that environmental racism refers to policies, practices, and decisions that disproportionately expose communities of color. Communities of color, of course, this is from the US. We are all communities of color, so all of us. To environmental hazards, poor urban planning, and inadequate infrastructure. From air pollution to lack of green spaces. Lack of green spaces is a justice issue. These injustices have long-term health and economic consequences. For example, I can give a typical example is the siting of a dump site. Where is the dump site of Bamenda located? It is located in a very poor community, or people who don't have a voice to speak. That is environmental racism. It doesn't matter if it's in Cameroon. It's the same thing with pipe-borne water. There are some communities that don't have pipe-borne water. I can go to rural communities. Why? Because the people who are there, they don't have that capacity, they cannot speak out. That's the type of environmental racism. So any policy that favors policy, practice, or decision that disproportionately affect all of us here, because we are all community of color. In Cameroon, in Bamenda, it is environmental racism. That's why we are here. How do we look at these things systematically and address some of these issues? Now, we talk of racism, now we go to environmental justice. Of course, this is a long academic definition, but it's pretty simple. Very simple. And because it says that environmental justice essentially means that everyone, regardless of your economic status, regardless of your tribe, regardless of your origin in Cameroon, regardless of your income, has the right to the same environmental protections and benefits, as well as meaningful involvement in the policies that shape their communities. This is what it is. It's as clear as it gets. So now, we are here in Bamenda. Waste management is a serious challenge in Bamenda. Can we say that, can we identify some instances in Cameroon where we see that there's environmental injustice? Can we identify? By show of hand. In Cameroon, here, in the community, these things are there. No.
Thank you, Executive Director. I want to cite one instance. Along the new road, the so-called new road,
Yeah.
there was a dump site that was created there. And when FEDER filed an action before the High Court of the land to get them in that spot, the matter had hardly even begun, and we realized that we were already clearing the area. But when you look at that area, the inhabitants were already complaining of itches because there is a chichen water. They were already complaining of itches and some funny kind of skin diseases, so which was already a problem. And so we decided to file a public interest environmental litigation to stop that act. So I discovered that before the action even gets to start, they are already doing what they are supposed to do.
I can imagine. Thank you so much. Yes. Yes.
Okay.